on every point. And as you mentioned, I think it is a wonderful breath of fresh air. I think there's no doubt that the immigration lobby have used accusations of racism to deter their opponents. And I mean, I can brush that off, but to accuse ordinary working people in this way, I agree with the Archbishop. It's absolutely outrageous. They have genuine concerns about housing, education, health. We can talk about those if you want to, but these are genuine concerns, and these are voiced by people who don't have a lot of power, a lot of influence, a lot of money, but they are the receiving end of the difficult end of mass immigration, and they should be listened to.
Amol Rajan, you're more concerned.
Are we serious, Jeremy? Very nice to be with you, and nice to be speaking to Andrew Green again. I mean, are we serious in saying that there is still a problem of people who are concerned about immigration being silenced? I mean, we've talked about nothing else for the last 10 years. It was in 2005 that Michael Howard made immigration absolutely central to the Conservative Manifesto. It's been central to all three of the main party manifestos in 2005, 2010 and 2015. I think the point about what the Archbishop says, I mean, obviously, I agree with Andrew Green that it's reasonable for people to be concerned. It's also, very reasonable for people to feel fear. I think people should be very sceptical about whether or not the politics of fear is actually a problem. Fear is a legitimate emotion. The world is changing. It's changing fast. People interpret change as lost, and they're very worried about it. But it strikes me as intellectually sort of docile for us to be seriously talking about the idea that the liberal left in Britain, which is what the Daily Mail in paragraph 4 of this morning's splash says, sort of accusing people who are concerned about immigration as bigots. Of course they're not. Of course they're not. The idea that this is still a prevalent issue, that we've silenced people, is utter rubbish. We've talked about nothing else for the past decade. I know when I speak to people in Number 10, when I speak to senior politicians, I talk about how can we address the issue of immigration. It's absolutely central to political debate in Britain at the moment, and it gets less so when people start throwing about accusations.
But when you use the word bigot, you remind me that in the 2010 general election, a woman, Gillian Duffy in Rochdale, complained to Gordon Brown about immigration, and he labelled her a bigot. That was his response.
Gordon Brown is a psychologically fragile person whose commentary in response to stressful situations I couldn't possibly begin to defend. The reason I use the word bigot is because it says, paragraph 4 of the Daily Mail today, it comes after years in which the liberal left has attacked those expressing concern about unprecedented levels of immigration into Britain as bigots. Of course not. Can we please raise the sort of calibre and quality of this sort of intellectual argument for or against immigration? Immigration is part of a massive disruption and change in the modern world, which is to do with globalisation and the changing relationship between nation states. It is hugely damaging to some people, it's hugely dislocating to some people, and it benefits others. It benefits people in the poor world especially, and it benefits rich people in the rich world. The people that lose out tend to be people who are poorer in the rich world, and that's why you get genuine concern about change, people who see this change as lost, and it explains the rise of parties like UKIP and Donald Trump.
Andrew Green, the thrust of all that is you have not, during your time leading Migration Watch, been accused of bigotry.
Well, that's not quite true. Mr. Rajan's own newspaper accused me of racism twice. We took them to the courts, and of course, they collapsed, and they paid us £10,000 in damages. And the Daily Mirror compared me to the Ku Klux Klan, and they paid up as well. So there's no question that there were efforts to attack Migration Watch some years ago. But I agree, that's past. But let's understand that did happen, and let's not try and deny it. But if we address the situation now, it is the case that we're not just facing immigration, we're facing mass immigration of 1/3 people every year. We've got a population that is going to grow by the size of Liverpool every year. And this places huge strains on our whole society, most particularly, and I think this is what the Archbishop was referring to, most particularly, and Amol Rajan agreed also, most particularly on those who are least wealthy, least powerful, least ready to or able to disappear to a leafy suburb.
I quite agree, but Jeremy, and what Andrew Green is saying is absolutely right. It's interesting that we accuse him of racism. I would imagine that was some time ago, and I'm glad that case has collapsed. I certainly wouldn't accuse him of being a racist now. I think he's been a very fine and eloquent and articulate champion of the case against mass migration. But he mentioned a couple of facts there, and I know this is a discussion about what Justin Welby said and not about immigration as a whole. But just to put it into a bit of context, there are a huge number of concerns that people have about mass migration which promote ignorance ignorance and a general kind of lack of understanding of the impact of mass migration, which does have a big impact, particularly on poor people in the rich world. Just to give you a couple of those, this isn't going to be a big, long screed, but just to give you a couple of those, a lot of people think that new immigrants claim massive amounts of housing benefit. Actually, 17% of UK-born residents claim housing benefit, and only 11% of new migrants. Similarly, on working age benefits, and lots of people, if you read certain newspapers and you get a general sense of the debate and tone of debate in England at the moment, people would think that huge numbers of migrants claim working age benefits. Actually, 17% of UK natives do, 6% of migrants do. And the
I think, if I may say so,
Lord Green?
If I can get a word in edgeways here, I think that we should
avoid...
avoid...
hang on, let him speak.
I think we should avoid throwing these numbers around. I don't think they mean much to many people, and they're certainly not numbers that we have used. But it is the case that at current rates of immigration, we'll have to build a house every 6 minutes just for new immigrants. There's a very simple and clear statement, but it's wider than that. It's wider than that. I think there's a strong feeling that mass immigration on the present scale, we're not opposed to immigration, but we're opposed to mass immigration. And on the present scale, it's changing our society at a very rapid pace, much more rapid than people wish to see, and that's why 75% of the population want it reduced, including, by the way, a majority of our ethnic minority communities.
And are you worried, Andrew Green, are you worried that possibly once the Archbishop of Canterbury says it's okay to be against immigration, that it gives permission for all kinds of maybe slightly more people who want to really launch aggressively into immigrants to do it?
No, I don't think so. I think I'm afraid there's a small minority of people of that kind who'll do it anyway. I think what it's more likely to do is to give people permission to have a sensible discussion, as Amol Rajan is trying to do now. My point really is we need the broader picture. Going into the details, I'm happy to talk statistics to anybody, but if we're talking to and showing understanding of the people we're now concerned about, we've got to keep the discussion in terms that they will understand.
Amol, sorry, just a second. Do you believe that this will give permission to people to make really nasty attacks on foreigners?
Not so much more than they already do. I think Andrew's completely right, if I may say, that there are always going to be nasty elements, and that we need to, if you like, shine a light on those nasty elements, allow them to express their views, and hope that through rational argument we can neutralise those people. But I've got to say, on the building a house every 6 minutes, good, let's build more. On the kind of general what's going on with mass immigration, if you have a population of 60 million and you have 300,000 net coming in every year, that's 1/200th roughly. So if you imagine a piece of paper with 200 dots on it, every year we're adding a new dot. That dot tends to be flexible, hard-working, highly productive, paying tax, and not breaking the law. That's the situation with Britain in immigration at the moment. Let's make it work. But it's true, and I agree with Andrew, and I think the main point where we strongly disagree is the idea that there's this huge accusations of bigotry and racism flying around. Actually, people who are very bigoted have plenty of time to speak in the public domain. I don't think Andrew Green is one of those people, by the way. I think he's been articulate and very far from racist. But the idea that this is sort of silencing of people who are concerned is utter contemptible nonsense. It's rubbish. We've been talking about very little else for the past 10 years.
All right.
Election manifestos are dominated by it. Immigration has been top of the public debate in Britain for the last 10 years and will continue to be for a long time yet.
Thank you very much, Amol Rajan, who's editor of The Independent, and Lord Andrew Green of Deddington, chairman of Migration